Hey everybody, welcome to True Confessions of a Car Guy. My name's John Gavin. I decided to do this because I've been in the car business a little over 40 years. And as I've been going through all those 40 years, I'm not proud of this fact, but I've worked at 49 different dealers. Over those 40 plus years, I have seen some of the craziest stuff happen. Good, bad, the ugly, you name it. I've worked with some real characters, and I thought it would be, and I know a lot of you car guys and gals have always said this, there should be a sitcom about the car business. There have been a couple close to it, but a real sitcom, because it's nothing like any other business, I believe, that exists. So I figured, what's the next best thing? Let's do a podcast. I'm going to do a lot of the truth of what happened in the car business. And this isn't about making deals and how we made money on something. This is about when it was really fun to be in the car business. I look at it and go, I got some real bad news. I'm going to go to my manager right now, but I think he's going to say $500 because your car's on fire out there. Just like that. This guy went apeshit crazy. But if I would have stayed longer, it would have killed me because all we did was party. It was just a nonstop party. The car business is a pretty, let's just say we're a playful crowd. We like to enjoy life. They all have toys. They all have nice watches. They all have nice houses. And they all like to go out. So I don't know if I could use that one.
No,
but that was so funny.
No, that
one won't go.
They threw keys on top of roofs. They took titles and burned them. They did all kinds of crazy stuff. We've created our own monster. We any problem that the car business has, we've created it. But we had a fun time getting there.
And all you car guys and gals who are out there who got stories like mine, you want to send them in to me, I'd be more than happy to read them or have you on the show. Send it to confessionsofacarguy@gmail.com and we'll all laugh. that really happened.
Welcome everybody to True Confessions of a Car Guy, live in studio. We're here in our next episode. We have not one, but two special guests with us tonight. And alongside me in the studio are the host and co-host. We got John. There he is. And then also Frankie. And then we're going to be joined by Victor as well as Pat as well. So let's bring them on. What's going on?
Hey, Batch, how we doing tonight?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Every day's a holiday for me, brother. You know that. So
yeah, sure.
Today was almost Gavin foursome. So I want to have on today, want to let everybody know today I have my brother Pat on. He's my younger brother who everybody thinks he's older. I don't know why. And we have Victor Chavarria, who was a longtime finance specialist, worked for GMAC for a long time. And that's kind of how I met him, was through the car business and getting deals. But Pat and Victor have been close friends for many, many years. So, Pat, how long you known Vic? And
I met Vic back in about 1988 or 9. I was a new finance guy, and
I was only 12 then.
I got on the phone with GMAC. As you know, I was a backup finance guy. And I met this guy, and we just kind of hit it off. We just started talking to each other, and we both loved high school hoops, so we had some things in common. We talked about softball, and lo and behold, he's been my mentor probably for all 35 years that I know him. I mean, he's guided me through the business in many different stores. So,
and we had a good time doing it too.
Yeah, we had a great time. We became great friends. We've been to games together and stuff like that. But he was always my mentor when I was a young finance guy. He showed me the ropes, showed me what to do, taught me how to get a machine oiled up, when I needed a different tier change. Yes. And it's been a hell of a ride.
And Vic, I met you through, I think, motherfucking you about a
He was.
deal. Yeah,
It was.
I think.
I can tell you were at Pollock Cadillac, and
Yes.
I noticed the same last name. I go, what the fuck? Are these guys related? And I don't know. Then I got him on the line. I go, hey, you got a fucking brother that talks like Jimmy Cagney? He goes, yeah, sounds like my brother John. I went, oh, yeah, okay. We did a little
Yeah.
Humphrey Bogart here today. I said, tell him to cut it
Well,
out.
it's hilarious because I'm, I got walked into that store and it was a nightmare. I followed a guy, I'm not even gonna say who it was, but there was chargebacks. And for those of you who like my wife, chargebacks are got people bill out the customer and you get an approval. And of course they make money on the rate and they make money on what they sell. I had a guy who just lied, cheated, and steal, take his place. And I everybody cancel everything. So then you get charged back any money you did make. And since I'm the new guy, I'm responsible. So it was my first whirl back with GMAC. I hadn't used GMAC till since I was with conversion vans.
Right.
And that was like 72, 84, 96 months. GMAC in where was that at? Oakbrook Terrace, maybe? Is that where that office was?
It was. No, well, it was Oakbrook. Oakbrook Terrace was across the street.
Oakbrook, yeah. So I need to get a deal done, and I'm talking to my brother, and he goes, "Well, you're lucky you got pictures of it." Well, I call you up, and it's like, no, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I called Pat back, yelled at him more than I yelled at you. I was like, "What the fuck, Pat? This guy's on the road. I thought this guy was going to buy some deals for me."
I jump in. I said, "You got it all wrong." I go, "I just got 4 or 5 deals, but with this guy." He made me wait on the phone for 20 minutes. He oiled up the machine, and I got everything approved.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites there.
Mo,
Mike was still around then, working at the Borg Pontiac then, and he used to call me, "Hey, my buddy John, I told him he don't know how to talk to you, Victor. I don't know what's the matter with him."
And think about how it's changed, Vic. Back then, it was relationships, right? Everything was relationships. I mean, we didn't know a guy was a 750. If I'm right, we didn't know what his credit score was.
No, most of the time you didn't know.
No, we didn't know none of that. We talk to the customer. We hey, what's the last car you had? How'd you do? What did you make your payments? Are you late? Where you been on your job? How long they fill out the credit app? And then we fax it over to you. You take a look, and I'm sure you had piles of deals. I mean, you were at GMAC for how many years at GMAC?
21 I spent there.
21 years. And you'd get piles and stacks of apps, right? Yeah. And if they weren't filled out, what'd you have to do? You take it, put that one on the bottom. If there was something missing, start.
Well, the girls would put them through like this. It's kind of like another fax machine, and it would read into everything on the computer, and then they had to fill in the corrections. That's all they did. Then it would jump into my queue, and then they didn't let us send any approvals back then. You had to call them all. So I had 300. I had 300 fucking phone conversations a day. So I got bam, I was off. Bam, I was off. Another one. She said I got 3 guys waiting, and I'd pick up the button and go bang, bang, bang. They're all gone. And I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And I'll call back like 2 minutes later.
Right. And Pat, when you got in the finance, did they have where you called in a deal and it was all just press a button and it went to a bank? It was still fax.
We were still fax.
So Frankie, though, when you went in the box, we call the finance office the box. For those of you who didn't work in the car business, you were just a button presser, right? You would pick which banks you wanted to send it to, right? And then
dealer track.
Pretty much. It was all through dealer track. I remember meeting Vic years ago through my dad and you, but then running me through CAC and all those, how to do all those deals, which was its own like dealer track.
Yeah.
But less phone calls, but we'll come back to a story with my my endeavors with Chase. This is my first deal I ever billed out, which was unbelievable. But that was the one that put me on the map as the guy who could sell. You'd sent out the group text. I think I mentioned it a couple weeks back where you had me watch the house and everything. But I put my first deal through. Another friend of ours was our GM, and at about halfway through my pitch, buys everything. Gap warranty, tire and wheel. I didn't even know we sold EPA protection, but he bought it, and he bought like a $8,000 HHR. I had like $5,000 in the back, and I submit it. It's all signed, sealed, delivered. I get a phone call the next day, and I can't mention the buyer's name. We'll call him L, but L calls me, and he's like, "Hi, I'm looking for Frank." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Frank, finance manager. How can I help you?" It's like, "Oh, hey, it's L over from the bank, and we just got this deal for so and so customer. Do you know what LTV stands for?" It's my first week. The guys over at DDI didn't tell me what LTV was. They just said sell product. I'm like, of course I do. He's like, "Oh, okay, good, because Chase does 134%, and I got a deal here with your name on it that's 188%.
So again, for my wife Liz, LTV is loan to value.
Right.
So if you sell a car, the car you book it out. In other words, you say what the car is, how much the bank would like. It's kind of like you getting a mortgage,
Exactly.
and they want you to put 20% down or 20, whatever it is, based on your credit.
Yep.
So when you send in a deal to get 188 bought, there was like you couldn't do that at GMAC or Chase. You couldn't do that at like a private bank, right, Vic?
Right. Yeah.
Like
it was basically
maybe.
It's operating now like it should have been operating back then. You know, it was GM's partner, but they were really acting like a bank, though. They did everything in like bank guidelines. You know, they didn't want crazy loans on there. And if you happen to buy something nutty, the guy'd come running out and basically like he'd have a little plastic back and he'd hit you on the head. He go, "What are you doing?" I'd say, "Oh,
I'm sure that first deal got framed at this. It was Chase. I'll say that. So if he's watching, he's going to know who he is. But it was through Chase, and I went from here. I'm finance manager. Of course, I know what LTV means. To I got to redo this whole contract. I went right down, and I don't think I told you or our other friend that I had to redo that contract. That was my first one.
Do you remember your first deal, Pat? Your first finance deal? Was that a David?
Yeah, David Pontiac.
Yeah, they don't exist anymore.
He got about 13 people in my office. There was a family of 13. Closed the door. None of them spoke English. And he wrote on the manager's sheet, "No hill for a climber, make it happen." And, you know, I ended up billing the people out. I got the deal approved. I was all excited. I did it all by myself. I called across to the used car trailer where he worked. I said, "They're approved, and I think I got it billed out right. You want to come over here and check it?" And I was off to the races after that. It was kind of fun.
I think I still have that framed. No hill for a climber. I always look at it whenever I'm having a down day. No hill for a climber.
You would draw stairs and me running up the stairs and put "No hill for a climber, get it done." And he put it on every manager's sheet.
Yeah, I remember that deal. It was 13 people, maybe even more. It was a whole family affair. You know, back in the day when people bought cars. Now this is this is 80s. We're talking about late 80s, and when people, it was like a family affair to buy a car. It was a big deal. You know, it's like second big purchase or second largest purchase people make in their life. You got a house, that's a huge purchase, and a car. And back in the 80s, people would come in they'd get dressed up. It was a special deal. It was the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, the aunts and uncles. It was a big deal, especially if you were from another country, because it's a huge ordeal to come here and buy a new car. And I can remember they're so excited about that I just threw Pat in and said, "Hey, just bill them out." There must have been, I don't know, 100 questions they were asking me. And I said, "Oh, he'll be able to take care of that. He'll be able to take care of that." And he didn't really know anything, but they were grilling them. I was just watching them outside the door. I can't remember who I was with. I think your friend Paolo. And we're looking in, and you got sweat coming down.
Yeah, it had to be 90 degrees in there with all those people with the door closed, you know.
And there were only 2 seats, you know. Finance office had 2. I think we dragged one more chair in for that group, but there was like a whole choir behind them. It looked like it was hilarious.
No, you were probably shrinking. You went some distance, about this big by the time the deal was done.
Yeah, I was like all the way down below the desk. I could just see my eyes.
And the worst part was I had him training with the guy who his first question to the customer was, hey, what do you do for a living? And the guy told him, and he said, well, listen, your rate's kind of high. If you bring me in sweatpants, this one guy worked for, who do you work for? Wilson. Guy works for Will. Now this is Pat's. This is supposed to be his mentor, kind
This
of.
is my trainer. This is my first trainer. You know who he is. We won't mention any names.
Yeah. So he goes. So who do you work for? Well, I work for Wilson. Ah, great. They make those nice jumpsuits, right? They make the sports suit, the top bottom. He say, bring me in some sweats and maybe I get that rate down. Well, I'd walk into that office. And Pat would be like, all the deals are in here, John. What do? I'd go to him and what's going on? He goes, well, I got to wait for that guy to resign. Well, why's he got to resign? Everything's right. He's just at whatever rate. He goes, I just got to resign. Well, I'm not wise to what's happening yet. For about, I don't know, Pat was in the box a couple of weeks in finance. And all of a sudden, there's like all kinds of people coming back to resign. One, bring him a gold chain. The rate would drop 2 points. We had a cab driver that he had his rate, he would drop a half a point every time the guy gave him a ride. The contract, I'm like, Mike, you know how you got to pay that contract. GMAC comes in and they do a floor check. We're with a GM franchise at the time. His car's been gone for a while, and he's just telling me he's got to come back in. And I hear him one day come in, and he said, okay, what time you want me to pick you up? Because he'd go out, party, and then he'd have a ride like a chauffeur. And he'd come in, he'd resign, and this went on for almost 2 months. So, yeah, that was back when you get it. Now, today what it's like, you don't pay up a contract. I mean, they know everything's
it's 30 seconds now.
Yeah. I think you got 15
they know
days
exactly
to
what
submit
you're
it
doing,
now.
when you're doing it, and everything else.
Yeah. Did you remember we had drafts? Do you remember the drafts?
You have to write out the check and they staple the draft to the contract and send it.
Yeah.
That was a big pain in the ass back then, trust me, because we had one report that we got every day. These are open drafts. We don't have a contract to match. So part of our job every day was calling everybody that had an open draft. And that was a disaster because I put the list on and go, first guy said, hey, where's this contract? He goes, I don't know. Oh, what do you mean you don't know? I said, you just drafted on $25,000. Where's the contract?
Right.
I don't know. Let me see what I can do. I'll call you back. And then the guy don't call you back all day, and I'm calling him back at 4:00. Hey, what happened with this? He goes, oh shit, we're gonna have to pay that one off. I said, I need a check like today, dude. These guys are all over my back, But that was a pain in the ass doing that every day. Every day we had to clear that.
I worked at a dealer. I won't mention any names. We bill out a guy. He deals good. He's approved. The dealer was a little short of money, and he said to me, we're going to dance with the banks. I said, well, what does that mean? He says, well, I want to draft on it like 3 or 4 times because I need to get some cash into the bank. We're going to dance with the banks. And I said, well, I ain't dancing because I don't know how to do that. And he stormed off and went away. He came back about 2-3 hours later. He said, all right, we won't dance with the banks. Just send the contract through.
Yeah, that was a big problem. There were some dealers that got in big trouble over it. They would write 4 different banks on one contract.
Well, I got stories for you for that, John. I won't mention any names, but I could tell you.
Let me hear one.
I'll give you one. So I go out, they come, hey, check on this guy, would you? I mean, we got a couple contracts outstanding. We'll go see what's going on. So I go in the GM. He said, what's the name on the guy? I said, this. He says, it's a, well, let's just say a 2015 Chevy, whatever, truck.
Yeah.
And I said, here's the VIN number. He goes, nothing in our inventory like that. I said, did you have anything in your inventory like that? He goes, yeah. He goes, I don't think so. Let me check with the office. I'll be right back. He comes back. He goes, what's the other one? He shows me. I said, here's the last 6. Look it up. He looks it up. He goes, no. I said, you got the right dealer? And then when he opened the drawer, I went like that. It busted out payment books. I went, oh, what the hell is that? He says, oh, that's nothing. He's fumbling. The books are falling on the floor. I went. So then I said, okay, time out. I called everybody. I said, I need some people down here to help me. We need to go through this right now. And we caught the guy. He had like 25 contracts in the drawer. What he would do is he was paying his ex-employees to let them use their names to put contracts together on cars. And he was taking VIN numbers off of the internet somewhere. And he would draft on it and get the money, and he filling up his bank account. And then he had what he would do is he'd start waiting for the payments to come, and then he would pay the payments as they came. He had them all in order, but one day when I got there and he opened the drawer up, they all fell over. I said, "You don't know whose payments due next?" And he goes, "No, don't call the cops yet." I said, "It's not me, buddy. You don't have to worry about me, but I'd get out of here if I were you." But that was one of the worst ones. We had $300,000-$400,000 worth of cars missing.
Wow.
I had one where I walked in, and this was literally my day every day. Ring, ring. Hello, John Gavin Finance. When I signed the contract, your system was down, so I didn't get to see any paperwork, and I was told my payment was $400 for 36 months, and I just got the payment book. It's $500 for 72. What can we do about that? I was like, well, let me see. Now this went on. I'm not shitting you. 3 times a day I'd get that call, and that really happened. This guy would just bang them and blank them. In other words, they'd sign all blank contracts. Now, I don't know why anyone would sign a blank contract. I just don't. It just wouldn't do it.
It was more common than you think it was, though.
I find that out afterwards. It's like a normal thing. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But
I'd walk in,
that
the
was
guy
his
said, "Let me
MO.
get your contract together." And I look, he's got a signed contract blank, and he puts it in the machine. He goes, "Where are the numbers at?" I went, "You're asking me? I don't know." "What's the matter with you?" I said.
I've had some horror stories that I've seen.
Tell you, there was some crazy, when I worked we mentioned that Chase, and I worked for them, and I won't mention any names again, but I went out, I got to the dealership and the state's attorney was there, and I said, "What are you guys doing here?" And there's cops everywhere and everything. I'm going, "Well, something's really bad happening here." So I called the office. I said, "I think we got a big, big problem." I said, "Let's find out what's owed to us." He called us back. He goes, "It's about 300,000 or 400,000. I said, "Well, that's good." He goes, "Good? What are you talking about?" I said, "There's a bank here right now. It's got $4 million outstanding. We just got to glad that's not us." A lender that you guys know very well, though they prosecuted the guy actually. But it was absolutely nutty when you walk in the middle and it was just nothing but chaos. I mean, people are running around, the employees. One guy said, "I quit. I'm leaving. Bye." He walked away.
In the early 2000s, like 2000 to like about 2008, I think it was rampant that there were finance guys who were just bad. They were just bad guys. They were gambling or whatever it was. Because I can remember going to a place, because I've had 49 jobs. I've been all over. You can't keep up with me. And I can remember being at one place, coming in, and there's like 70 cars on the street, not funded. And the guy's job was, guy told me my job was to get it. Now we're dealing with credit. And he said, "My job, I got to fix this," because I was known as a guy who could get stuff done. Right. So I'm looking at every deal and I'm noticing, like, I'm going through each one. Again, our Pat and I are brothers. Frankie's my nephew. Our dad was a cop. So we had a lot of cop friends. I'm looking at all these deals and I notice there are multiple times that there's the same cosigner on 2 and 3 deals. So I'm like, wait a second, how many referrals does this guy get? So I call them up. They tell me they don't even know the person on this other contract. Now, the guy who did all this is gone. So I had to bring in all these deals back in, re-sign them all. Thank God the people would come back in and do it back. I don't know if that would happen today in the sense that I don't think, you can get away with it for one. Because
you hear from a lawyer instead.
Yeah, you would have a lawyer immediately. They'd be on the internet everywhere. But back then, they could get away with it. And I think I got every car back but one. And my dad helped me find, we had the DEA, we had the FBI, because it was a gang out of Africa that took the car across the country, across the world. They took the car.
Shit.
And it's the only car we couldn't get back. But that's what I've taken jobs where I walk in, and that's what you're walking into, that nightmare. So getting back to relationships, because we became friends after the James Cagney routine when we first met. It was it's a very stressful business. You walk in, you're the new guy, and you walk into something like that, you got a bunch of deals to get, and you're like, let's get these fucking deals done. Let's fix this. But
I think I've walked into many of
That had to be
horror
disaster.
stories.
On our side, it was bad, but we had the computers to help figure all that stuff
Yeah.
out. On your side, you had to just like dig in the holes. And
Yeah.
I can tell you, there was one thing, and the whole business changed. One particular incident changed the entire car business across the country. We used to have these things like, we used to draft like that. Whenever they wanted to finance used cars, they would get these. We had these little forms at GMAC where you would fill 5 VIN numbers out, put what your book value was, and then it would be 80% you could finance as a floor plan. So I'd put it on the side. We put them all in there like that, and then they send it to me, and then they'd say, "Hey, go look at the cars, make sure that they're there, make sure everything's okay." I said, "Okay." So that went on for a while. Every dealer was doing it, so it was no big deal. And sometimes they waived if the guy was really good. They didn't go see the cars; they didn't care. So we had one dealer who was really, really good. He put on like 20 cars on there, And what he figured out back then in the system, our system didn't have what they call duplicate VIN checks. So what he was doing, he was taking cars with VIN numbers and he was putting old VIN numbers from like 2 years ago, put them on. He made a mistake one day on the thing. He had the last 6 numbers were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, he put a bad number in there. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, and he got paid for it. He goes, "Oh, really?" So he dummied up all these last 6 numbers, sent them on. He was getting paid for all this stuff. And by the time we got to figuring, we got to go see all these cars, there's like 50 or 80 or 100 on there. There was no cars. We just made all that stuff up, and we had to chase everything down. It was a mess down there. But that's the kind of stuff that guys would do, just with a little mistake. So they created what they call the duplicate VIN system. So anytime there were two VIN numbers that came in on a deal, like at your store or somebody else's store, they would match up in the system and said, "Hey, stop the deal right now. We got 2 cars, the same VIN someplace." And it happened a lot because the guys were getting trades, turn in a trade, and then they would be selling the trade again. So now you got the same car in there being on a trade and somebody else buying it. But it happened all the time. But that changed everything from that one guy making a mistake, putting the wrong number, getting paid, and realize, I could get rich this way,
Well, I've said it many times. The car business, all the problems we got, we normally created it. We've created that problem because we did a lot of unscrupulous things. Again, I've never done it myself. I've been part of, trying to do the right thing, especially for the customer. I'm not going to say I didn't try to get the bank a couple times. I definitely did. There's no doubt in my mind.
Everybody did.
Yeah, that was, it's like anybody, like a loan officer for a mortgage guy. They're just trying, or lady, they're trying to get their deal done. So did I say, they made 38,000 and not 28? Yeah. How much do you make? I make 700 a week. Okay. That's net, right? So you make 1,200, right? And they'll just look at you and go, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Congratulations. You get a raise and a promotion.
Right. Pat, you made unlike me, everybody, who 49 jobs. I think Pat's had like 5, maybe 6. I know not a lot. Not many. You worked for the last place you were with before where you're at, you were there 20 years plus.
24 almost.
So you went from the front end, which for Liz, the front end is selling the cars and financing the cars and buying the cars for the lot, to now you're a body shop general manager, and you were 20 years ago, you got into it. What's one of the biggest differences that you ran into going from the front to the body shop, dealing with the dealer or customers?
You're dealing more with the customer and an insurance company versus the regular just customer day in and day out selling. You still got to sell yourself. There's a body shop every 5 feet now, so that part was real simple. And I kind of run the body shop the kind of way I ran the store. Everybody was on time. We took care of the customer. If the customer had a beef, we took care of them, and we still do it today because you got Yelp and you got all the Googles and you got all that stuff. So, we have to take care of the customer. They're fixing cars. I came from a high-line body shop. We were fixing cars that were $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 cars. We fixed $400,000 cars. So, that's a different breed. It's a different animal customer. But being in the body shop is probably the best move I ever made in my life. getting out of retail, going to the body shop. I got normal hours. I got to see my first son, which is Frank, and then my second son, Jack. I got to see most of their, I missed some of that with Frank, as I was a general manager of a store. But as I got into the body shop, I was able to get out and do those things. So the hours were great. The first 6 months, I was scared. Every Saturday, I would get in my car to go get a newspaper and coffee, and I thought someone was trailing me because I worked Saturdays for all those years, and I thought I was sneaking around. It was like I was afraid I was going to get locked up, But it's a big change, when you're working Saturdays, for all those years, and then you're off on Saturday and you're looking around. And I'm obviously, you guys know that I all coach, and I just retired, but I was coaching at that time, and that's the reason why I took the lateral promotion so I could go coach. And the body shop's great. You know what? It's a great entity to have at the dealership. It takes care of the customer. It's a one-shop stop for the customer. They got service. They got the body shop. They have sales. They have everything there, parts. It's all under one roof. And it's been really, really fun. And I met some great people, just like the car business. It's a little different than the car business. We're a union shop, which is a little tougher than a normal body shop. There's a little stricter rules, but I work for a great dealer group. I work for great guys. These guys that I work for are childhood friends. I know them for almost 40 plus years. So it's been a phenomenal run. I probably got about 3 or 4 more in the tank, and I'm going to be a consultant, and I'm going to hang out at basketball games with Vic.
One of the nice things about all that, though, Patrick, is you developed another skill that you could actually take out of the car business too. You don't have to work for dealerships anymore.
Yeah,
you could go work someplace else, and that was a lot of us at GMAC always wanted to learn how to buy paper because we could bounce. Your value became twice as high because now you're buying paper. You can go to any other bank, or you can go to other credit unions or any place else to get a job too. It opened up a lot of things.
Sure.
All the time I've known you, Vic, you've been in corporate with a corporate entity. Have you ever worked for a dealership on it?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of a little bit different story. I can tell you, I had the reason I left GMAC. I never would have left there. I mean, I had a great salary. I had 2 company cars. I was what they call a level 8, which is there's only 1 or 2 levels above that, and that's in corporate. So, and I was in sales all the time. I was out on the street all the time. I never had to go to the office or anything, And I was working out of the region. I was the regional F&I director. And the regional manager came up to me one day. There was this guy named Waylon, but he was from Texas. I don't think he's alive anymore. But anyway, comes up to me, says, "Hey, did you ever think about being a dealer?" And I said, "No, I never really thought about it." I says, "Would you want to do something like that?" I said, I don't have any money. I can't do that, He says, "Well, I got this program." He says, "It's minority dealer development." He said, "I could submit your name for it." And I went, "Okay, I don't care." He says, they'll call you up. You'll do some interviews. You do some stuff. It was the craziest thing I ever went through in my life because he submitted. There was 576 people in the pool. And he said, "We're going to take 8." And I just said, "I'm not going to bother. I'm never going to get selected." So I just kept going on doing my job and doing everything. So he calls me up one day and he said, "Hey, they cut this thing down. Half of the people don't have the money. You have to submit your financial statements, all this stuff." And he says, and then we went in for interviews. He said, they cut another half out. I said, so they're down to like 100. I said, that's a lot. So now you got to do a personality test and an IQ test. And I said, I'm not going to do that. He goes, come on. He goes, come on, Vic, just take the test. Just see where it goes. So I took the test. They eliminated, got it down to 16. And I went, okay, maybe now there's some possibilities. So they took us down to this Florida. We would fly all over these interviews and this testing every place down in Florida. And the group was called this Wilson Learning Group. They came up. I got to the hotel the night before I slept. The guy says, be ready at your hotel door at 8:00 sharp. So got all dressed up. I'm sitting there waiting at the desk. And then there's a knock on the door. Turn around, look, and there's nobody there. And there's a pile of papers. I'm not kidding you, this big. And I'm looking, what the hell is that? I go, this is like some crazy CIA stuff here. So I call the guy up. He goes, yeah, you got 3 hours. I said, 3 hours for what? He says, you got to read all that. I went, are you out of your mind? There's no way you're going to read all this. 3 hours to read. I said, I'm not even going to try. He goes, well, they're going to come in and test you on it in 3 hours. I went, you're out of your mind. He says, well, just do the best you can. That's what everybody has to do. So I read through like an hour and a half worth of stuff. I said, you know what, this is crazy. I still got this much to go. So I just start picking and choosing. And all it was information on dealerships, like actual dealership things that had occurred. And the guy comes in and he sits down with me and he says, there's going to be a psychiatrist and a psychologist in the couch sitting back there behind you. And there's going to be 2 role players with you. And I went, you people are crazy. There's something wrong with you. He says, come on. It's almost, you're almost there. I said, okay. So I sat down. You know, the luck of the draw, he went into a role play on a situation that I had read in the middle of that pack. And it was about a guy who worked in the body shop who had a drinking problem, and he was a great little league guy and all this stuff. I went right through it. He goes, he gets up, he goes, how did you do that? I went, you know, I have to admit, I just picked one out in the middle. I read 5 or 6. I read that, and that was one of them I read. He goes, oh, great job. He's the psychologist guy. The next day I went down, there was 8 of us in Detroit, and they selected us, and I went into minority dealer development for 4 years then. That's when I ended up quitting GMAC, and I went and worked in the store. You had to work in the store. They paid you $80,000 a year to be in the program, and you had to go work in the store in the sales capacity. So I went to Apple Chevrolet, and I sold cars there, and then I went to Dave Miller hired me, and I was doing some F&I and some sales manager, and I hated the hours. I couldn't stand it. Yeah. So then Dave comes to me one day, which was a blessing to me, and he says, I got a great deal for you. He says, I went and saw this used car class, people, how to do a walk around on a car and how to profile customers and everything. He says, can I send you to that school and then you come back and run the school here? I said, yeah, sure. So he sends me to Florida. I go on, I take all my notes, I do video, I did it, I come back and I start doing sales classes. And he says, I want you to hire people because I hire all the same thieves that keep coming back to me over and over. They're stealing, they're robbing me blind, and I hire the same goddamn people back. I want new people. I said, okay. So I would get waiters and all kinds of people. I went in and did that for a year and a half while I was in the program until some guy came and broke up the whole program and we settled out of court with them. But I actually worked in the dealerships for like a year and a half to 2 years. I worked at Apple and I worked in Dave Miller stores. And then, Dave hired me as an auditor there later too. So I would audit all his used cars. That was one of the things we learned in class. He goes, audit the used cars. I said, Dave, have you ever had a used car audit? He goes, I don't even know what that is. I said, well, you should do it. So then I would go around and he would cut everybody's salary by that. And everybody hated me by that time. They all had to go through the class. I had to go through the class too. They all hated it.
Wow. Well, that's another guy I worked for. I worked for Dave Miller. He's a great guy. His son, great guy. I can remember. He's more of a real estate guy to me than a car guy.
Well, he put together that place in Matt's, and he was telling all those dealers on Lincoln Highway there, if you're not going to go in there, you're going to be the only guy left here. That's how he got them all to move in there. He told one, he would go drive over to the dealership, sit down. You better move into there because I'm developing it all. I'm going to create all these dealerships. If you don't move in there, you're going to be the only guy left on Lincoln Highway, and they're all going to be over there. And he got everybody to move there but 1 or 2 guys.
Yeah. Now I think Gerald owns it all. They're best operators I've ever worked for.
Yeah,
they got it dialed in. They're really good guys, smartly ran. But another one I worked for in Matson. It's hard to
How
find
many of those
do
they have? How many stores they have in that thing now?
I think they own them all, but maybe one. I think because they bought the Hawk, they bought his too. So they got pretty much. I think
the Cadillac that they used to be the Cadillac Arnie Bauer.
I don't think that's the one. I think that's the one they don't have. But
right,
not.
And then the Ford store was one of the minority guys in our program actually. And I remember all that
I thought you were being kidnapped, Pat. I was getting a little nervous. I think I thought there was somebody sneaking up. I'm like, we're going to lose my brother. And they turned
somebody over
on him.
At least it's on tape.
Yeah. Where are you at? Oh, the hotel. And they just.
I'm interviewing from my closet. I didn't tell you guys, but I'm on the witness protection program.
Yeah. So is Frank. He's in the fitness protection program.
He's in the protection.
I watch what I eat right before I put it in my mouth.
So what's one of the, there's a lot of funny stuff there. What's one of the funnier things that happened to you when you were selling cars?
I I was a brand new salesman, and it was an honor to be in the car business when I got in the car business, and I had some great mentors, I should say. And my brother was obviously my main mentor. I mean, he's the one who got me in the business. He taught me. He was tough on me. He made me, learn what I know today is because of him. But I'm brand new. We're at Larry Fall Azuzu, which was Union at the time, and we're selling conversion vans. And my brother said, "Hey, make sure you take every up and make sure you answer the phone. That's people calling. That's money calling." So the phone rings. I rush over to the phone up desk. I grab it. "Hello, this is Patrick. Hi, I'm Joe so-and-so from across the street. I own the business, a printing company down the road there. I need 17 conversion vans for our company. I need you to send me the VIN number and the miles for each of the cars because I'm going to buy them all." Now my heart drops. I'm panicking. I'm ready to start foaming from the mouth. I come running back into the store and get my clipboard and a pen, and I'm writing down all the VIN numbers. And I'm out there, and it's 100 degrees. Your conversion vans, you open up.
We're all playing pinochle, by the way, in the showroom, watching them do this.
That was my other job. I had to guard the front door because they were playing pinochle for money in the back of the store. But that's another story. I'm getting all the VIN numbers. I come flying in the store. He's the finance guy. He goes, "What are you doing? What are you running around for?" I go, "You ain't going to believe this. I just got a phone up. 17 cars this guy wants from down the street. I got to get him bill of sales. I need the VIN number and miles right away." So I seen him kind of look at me like I was retarded. So I run back out there. I get everything. I come running to him. I go, "Get these on the fax. Get these over to this guy. These are 17 deals right here." I don't know how he kept a straight face. So he's pretending like he's putting on a fax. He looks at me. He goes, "It was me, asshole." So that was like my first deal. And then I sold. I was a machine shop guy. I was a tool and die guy for the first few years out of high school. So he calls me up one day. He says, "Hey, how are you going to raise a family as a tool and die guy making, $8 an hour or $7 an hour?" He goes, "Come and try the car business." He goes, "Work on Saturdays and Friday nights and see what you do." So I went Friday just to walk around and learn. So I come Saturday. I got one of those skinny ties. I'm dressed up. I never dressed up. I worked in a machine shop, so I'm dressed. He said, "Just grab customers and I'll help you." So I grab a couple customers. I sell the first car. I sell a second car. I'm like, this is easy. So I sit down to have a pop, and because it's hot out. It was summertime. He goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Get out there and get another up." So I grab another customer and I sell the car. And at the end of the day, he pulls me in his office. He goes, "Nice job. You sold 2.5 cars." So I look at him and I go, "How do you sell a half a car?" He says, "Pay attention. That was so-and-so's customer. You sold him, but he wasn't here. He was on lunch, but he gets half because it was his original customer." So I finally figured out what 2.5 cars meant. But that was the brunt of the car business. And, I had some great mentors, along with you, Vic, and as you know, and, I had my brother and, crazy, the other crazy finance guy that trained me. But, Jimmy Caparelli was, I worked with Caps for a long time, and I worked for some great dealers. Jerry Gleason was great. Monty was great. Those guys were all, very, very good guys. I had a couple of good runs at some other stores and so forth. But, I was at 2 stores for almost 30 years. I was down by Monty in City for 10 years, and then, 24 years at my last store. So
yeah, you didn't bounce around as much as the other guys did.
No.
Well, you made more that Saturday than I think you made in 2 weeks.
My normal check was like $350 for the week. I made like $900, and my brother told me, "Go park your car. You're going to have a demo." I go, "What's a demo?" He goes, "Well, you get a company car to use. I'm going to put some plates on it." He goes, "Go take that black Riviera over there." I had an 84 black Riv. It was dialed in. I'm driving out of the lot. I'm like, I thought I died and went to heaven.
I gotta say, I think my uncle's probably the best at breaking guys into the business, because my funniest story is when I first started with you, and I gotta say, Dad, it was at your expense. And I don't know, Vic, if you've heard this story. So I just started Morton Grove with John. I said I came from fitness, no clue what I'm doing. We're about, I would say, 3 weeks, maybe a month in. I'm starting to figure some things out. And my dad, I go over to my parents' house for dinner or something, and my dad's like, "So what are you guys doing on Saturdays? Or you guys got balloons on cars? You got the big sale signs with the hoods up?" He's like, "You got a popcorn machine?" I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, no, I mean, everything's on the internet now, Dad. It's, you get the best price car, and people come in, they buy it, they don't buy it. I don't know what to tell you. They're like, popcorn machine, we're not a movie theater. So that was like Saturday night. Sunday, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, well, maybe, yeah. I mean, I'll throw an idea out there. Sure, my uncle will appreciate it. He sees I'm taking charge. So I walk in Monday, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I'm like, hey, just out of curiosity, you think about maybe throwing a popcorn machine in there in the showroom, really get the customers going? And I think you laughed for about 40 minutes, and you let this fester as we're doing our, day-to-day stuff. And I took a couple ups, and, Badgie was on the phones and everything. And it's like 3:00 or something, a little bit of a lull. And he goes, hey, I'm going to call your dad. Don't tell him I'm going to call him. I'm like, okay, what's going on? He goes, just listen in on this. Okay. So, so he gets you on the phone, and all of a sudden I hear, hey, Pat, we have bad news. The owner just came in. The owner of all the stores we were at the time, now defunct, but the owner came in, fired Frank on the spot. He ran up to him and said, hey, we got to get some business rolling. We should put a popcorn machine in the showroom. And the owner fired him on the spot. Now I'm in shambles. I think I ran under the tower, ran back into my office. I was in tears. And I hear you sound like Porky Pig on the phone. You're like, what? Idiot? Oh yeah. He goes, what idiot gave him the idea to put a popcorn machine in the showroom? He got thrown out. And that was the final straw. I think you heard me laughing all the way from Morton Grove. I could not.
And that's how we were groomed. We put balloons on cars. We had the sale signs. We had a popcorn machine.
We did have a popcorn machine in there eventually. We did have a popcorn machine there, didn't we? We did. Pretty sure we did. That was the nicest parts department or customer-friendly parts department, I think, ever. And, that was on the TV show. That was at one time that was, somebody else owned it. And then...
they had it like a hangout. It had two.
Yeah, Marcus bought the place that had video games in or something crazy, and
a waiting room with
car dealer. We kicked ass and took names.
So I saw that episode. I saw that episode because you were like, "Hey guys, watch this. I'm going to be on TV," and I'm like, "I'd love to work there. They got a freaking racing simulator. This is great." Yeah, you took that. I think that was the first thing you took out.
It's you say it, John. You say it 100% correct. It was all about relationships back then. I made a friend of almost 40 years from the car business in Vic, and you know what? Just in relationship and trust and what he taught me and what he would look for, and he would tell me straight out when I started with him. He told me from the day one we made friends. He said, "Listen, if you don't lie to me and you send me the good paper, I'll help you with the tough, with the tough deals." And he said, and I'll stand behind you. He goes, but if I catch you lying to me one time, you're out of here. Don't call me. He said, he told me, just hang up and don't bother calling me. And we just, I worked in a tough area with credit, and, Vic was there every moment, and helped me in my.
I never had to check anything. He was always right there every time.
Yeah.
And the bosses would come to me and say, "What'd you do this? You do this?" It was Patrick, and he goes, "Oh, okay, I understand. Don't worry about it."
Did you ever have direct contact with the actual customers, Vic?
Occasionally, it was not as often as you would think. Working for all the other ones like CAC and some of those places, I had a lot of contact with customers.
Any crazy stories that happened?
Well, we had probably more stories in our office than anything, because I worked with one of the funniest guys in the car business, Pat Diskin. He was a nut. He was out of his mind. We had like these little cubicles that were cut off like that, and I'd look across at him, and he would just make fun of everybody when talking. He was really loud. Everybody, the women hated him. They said, "I can't stand him. He's just a big mouth, But he entertained the shit out of me. And I remember one day he comes up. He's yelling. They used to make a lot of mistakes on the contracts. He goes, "Okay, I got a new program." He says, "Anytime you make a mistake on a contract, you have to let me know before I have to go in and correct it." They didn't have the authority to go in the system. So I did. So he says, "Okay." He pulled out this little thing in his hand. I couldn't see what it was. It turns out it was like a little boxing glove about this big. And it had one of those things from the old cartoons where you squeeze and it's got that big X thing. Yeah. It would hit the girl in the head with it, and bam! And she goes, "What the hell?" I would just bust out laughing. I couldn't stop laughing. He did it to 10 different women in the office. He would sit there going, bam, okay, you had it wrong, lady. I'm gonna have to reclaim. I started laughing my ass off. He used to do crazy shit. I don't know if you guys ever remember. There's a place called Division Chevrolet years ago on Division Street, and it was a Puerto Rican Mexican area, and then he says, "Oh God, it's Division on the street. I got to go answer the phone." He goes, "Wait, I can't right now." I thought he had to go to the bathroom. I said, "Pat, I got the guy holding you. Hurry up, He comes back. He's got this big sombrero on, about this big. Okay, bueno. I went, "You're an asshole. There's something wrong with you."
Yeah.
Walking around the office with 100 people in there with a sombrero, people going, "What the hell's this guy doing? He's out of his mind."
He was into a lot of characters.
He was a character. I'd go meet Vic, for lunch. We would go to Burritos Don Juan in Park Ridge by your old house on North.
Oh yeah, he'd be in there drinking all the time.
And he'd be in there cocktailing at lunchtime. And if you caught him after lunch, you had a chance of getting the deal bought. But he wasn't nowhere near like Vic. I mean, Vic was my dealer, the guy I rehashed with. And whenever Vic would go on vacation, we would just hold everything and wait till Vic got back.
I was in the car. I was selling, or I was a finance guy, and I was working at the Highline store. I don't think they're still around. I don't think they own BMW in Hinsdale. I can't remember the name. It was in Hinsdale on whatever. And there was a husband and wife team that were then in their 70s, I think, but they'd sell 40 cars a month. And you're really, in the car business, it's the Michael Jordan rules. You do a good job, you can do anything you want. Nobody's going to fire you. At least when I was in the car business. Anyhow, I was kind of naive. I don't drink. So he says to me every day, and his wife works there, and she'd call customers like a real estate office. They had a little piece of, but they were sold cars. They had a little office that they took two of them. We had cubicles, and they cut out the middle, and they had this office for them. So every day he'd be gone, and he'd come back, and he'd always tell me, "I'm going for olive soup." I was like, well, I don't know, bring me some back. I don't know. Okay, I like the guy a lot, but he'd go from being this ogre in the morning to the most fun guy ever after 3:00. The guy he'd sell two more cars, and we'd be cracking up like. And I was there again because I was only there about a year maybe, and I never, the day that I left, I still didn't know what olive soup was. Turns out it's a martini. The guy would have a couple of martinis every day.
Yeah.
And his wife ended up telling me because she liked me, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to miss you, blah, blah, blah." Actually, when I worked there, the guy who invented, what's the mats, the floor mats that are WeatherTech. He was a salesman at the time. Genius. He's a smart guy. I mean, look what he's done. But he worked there. He's really smart. There's a lot of really smart guys that worked at this place. But when he told me he's going for olive, because I was like, "You're late, man." He goes, "Oh, the olive soup took longer than they expected." And I'm just young, naive, like, all right, well, and I like the guy, just an older guy. So, but anyhow, hey, thank you both for coming on. It's been great.
No, thanks for having me.
It's been fun. It's good to connect with you guys.